Welcome to Coal Nation, the official podcast of the American Coal Council. Join us as we dive into the critical conversations shaping the future of coal. From industry experts to policymakers, we're exploring coal's essential role in America's energy, economy, and global trade. Whether it's powering communities, driving innovation, or securing strong global economies, coal is at the heart of it all. ACC, proud to be American, proud to be coal. Coal Nation starts now.
Welcome back to Coal Nation Podcast, where we highlight the people, technologies, and policies shaping America's energy future. I'm your host, Kelli Sweet, and today we're joined by a leader whose career spans federal energy leadership, advanced research, and decades of work in coal and power generation. Our guest is Steve Winberg, President of Engineering at Powerscape Global, Advisory Board Member for the National Laboratory of the Rockies, former Acting Undersecretary of Infrastructure, and Assistant Secretary for Fossil Fuel at the U.S. Department of Energy, and CEO of Net Negative CO2 Baseload Power, Inc., and past ACC board member. Steve, it's an honor to have you with us. It was an honor to serve with you on the ACC.
Oh, well, thank you, Kelli, and it's great to be here with you today in lovely Miami.
Yes, we're in Miami. So let's just jump right into the first topic. The topic we're going to go into is the case for American Advanced Coal Technology, or the ACT initiative. So you've said in your opening remarks here at the Miami Coal Forum that the coal industry needs to develop first-century coal. Let's start there. What does that mean to you?
Kelli, what it means is that we've got an aging coal fleet. 45, 50 years old is sort of the average age of the fleet. It's not getting any younger, and we really haven't built any significant amounts of coal generation capacity since the late 70s, early 80s, and then it all sort of stopped here in the United States. And so while we have a pretty robust initiative to keep those plants running, and we're talking about that at the forum, what happens after that? And so, in my view, what we need to do is get about the business of developing 21st century coal technology. And so we call that American Advanced Coal Technology Initiative, or ACT. And so that's what we're about. We haven't fully fleshed it out yet. A group of people are working on this. But here's the premise, that we have lost the capability, or the capability is significantly declined here in the United States to go out and design and build, get a coal plant and get it permitted and operating, because we haven't done it in 20 years or more. So what do we do about that? Well, we think that we need an accelerated effort that would basically allow us to engineer once, but then deploy nationally. Number two, speed to feed. Feed studies are very expensive. They take a long time. And if we're designing a plant on a one-off basis, this plant, we're doing the engineering and design and feed study for this location, and then starting from a blank piece of paper or a blank computer screen now in another site, that's just not going to work for us. And so the idea is we do this, a plant engineer at once, as I said, moves us quickly towards feed. We think that will entice private capital to come back into the coal business. It's a pathway towards private capital. And then finally, but not last, is we had U.S. technology developed all through the late 60s and early 70s, and we exported that technology. But mostly the Chinese took over that technology now, and they're the ones exporting it. We think that if we do this right, and we think it's a public-private partnership, but if we do it right, then we can once again export some of this advanced technology to other countries that are going to continue using coal for decades and decades to come. And finally, it allows us the opportunity to export some of our highest quality coal.
Excellent. Yeah. So you talk a little bit about the 21st century. Let's talk to our viewers a little bit about the existing coal fleet, how important it is, but really, is it enough? So there's a lot of discussion right now on keeping the existing coal fleets online longer. We're familiar with several plants getting maybe 3 months or a little bit longer lifespan. How do you see that fitting into the bigger picture?
I kind of view that as the transition to 21st century coal technologies. Again, these plants are getting old. We can put capital into those plants and we can increase their life. We can also increase their capacity factor. We're averaging 45 or 50% capacity factor I think that's a reasonable average across the coal fleet. It was designed and built to operate at 75 or 80%
Yeah.
capacity factor. Can't do that, partly because of economic dispatch, but also partly because they've only invested enough capital in these plants to keep them running at some fairly low capacity factor. And so I think it's extremely important, and as we know, the Trump administration wants to keep these coal plants running, and it's necessary because if we retire these plants, the coal industry goes down, and it's a capital-intensive industry. Coal mining is. So my concern is if we lose the steam market, we'll keep the metallurgical coal market, but if we lose the steam market here in the United States, can the coal industry sustain itself? Or does it become kind of a boutique business focused mainly on metallurgical coal, and most of that, maybe half of that, going towards exports? So I think it's important to keep the existing fleet going, but look further down the road at what we can do to make sure we're using this vast natural resource we have for not just the next 10 or 15 or 20 years, but for decades beyond that, through the 20th.
Excellent. So you talk a little bit about designing the technology and exporting that. You talk a little bit about coal exports. So one of the questions we're hearing right now a lot around this coal space is there enough capacity for coal exports? So talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on coal export capacity. Do we have enough for the metallurgical coal that wants to keep moving, or even some of that thermal coal that's trying to go and power other countries?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And you do have to separate metallurgical coal from steam coal or thermal coal. And I think generally there's sufficient capacity in the metallurgical coal market. Baltimore, we've got Norfolk, we've got the Gulf Coast, and we can move more metallurgical coal offshore than we are currently doing. I think the issue becomes the western coals, Powder River Basin coals up in Utah, and there we don't have capacity. And so this administration is looking at a West Coast terminal, and we were looking at that in Trump 1.0. They're looking at it again, also down in Mexico. There's the potential, but it's a long rail run, of course, down to Mexico. And the ports have to be deep enough so that we can fill a container or a bulk ship with the coal. If they go off at half load, it's just not economical.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's a heavy lift, but if we can accomplish that, I think it'll be a powerful step forward to allow us to export coal.
Yes, I'm all supportive of that, Steve. Now I'm going to interrupt our coal conversation and we're going to do a fast five. Are you ready? You're ready.
I think so.
Steve is ready, everyone. So, Steve, what are you reading right now?
Other than the Wall Street Journal. Actually, I'm not right at the moment, but when we get back, I'm going to start reading. There's a 6-volume set that my father bought, Winston Churchill's Views on World War II. And it's a collector's set that my dad bought. Never was able to finish all 6 volumes. Yeah. And I'm going to try and do that in his honor. And I did start reading it a year or so ago, and it's fascinating, but we got off doing other.
Yeah. I was a history major in college, so I think that that's a good read for you. And Winston Churchill, I mean, the power there. Okay, next question. How does it feel to be a grandparent?
Nothing better.
Nothing better. If you could see his smile, if you're just listening in, Steve is beaming from ear to ear. How many grandkids do you have?
We have 3. We've got one in Lisbon, Portugal. We've got one in Pittsburgh, and we have one in Denver.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
So we're on airplanes a lot.
Worth it, because this is my next question. What's your favorite travel destination? Definitely.
Yeah.
What's the one thing that people would be surprised to learn about you?
Maybe that after I left DOE at the end of Trump 1.0, my wife and I took a 6,000-mile boat trip around the United States. We left out of the Potomac River. It's called the American Great Loop. You can Google it, and there's an association, and we joined that, and it goes up the Chesapeake, around the Atlantic, around New Jersey, up the Hudson River. We were up into Canada, and then popped out Lake Michigan in Chicago, down the Illinois, the Mississippi River, a little bit of the Ohio, the Tennessee Tom Bigby.
Wow.
Popped out in Mobile, Alabama. We did an overnight crossing to Florida. We wintered in Marathon. We went through Lake Okeechobee, We wintered in Marathon and then came back up the East Coast. So 2 years it took us.
That's phenomenal, Steve. And it's funny because as you're listing those places, I'm thinking about all the coal that moves in the Great Lakes and on our river systems here in the United States. So you got to see it firsthand. I'm sure you were going by barges of coal, moving to power plants or moving into the export seaborne market.
We're even on when we were doing the trip, the lower Mississippi was very low water levels. And so the barges were coming up half loaded, and a number of them diverted over to a canal called the Tennessee Tom Bigby, which from the south you pick it up in Mobile, Alabama, and come north to the Ohio. And that's a very windy man-made canal, and we had to watch our chart plotter very carefully because you'd see a barge loaded with coal or ore or grain or whatever coming up at you, and you have to pay attention to those big boys.
Oh, wow.
Because they don't maneuver so well.
No, they don't. They don't steer well. So here's the fifth one of our Fast Five. What's on the horizon for you in 2026?
In 2026, I'm going to stay focused on ACT Initiative. We also I'm working with some companies that have some of the 21st century coal technologies, and I'm going to be working with them to move those to commercialization as quickly as possible. And then the only other thing is my wife and I are going to go to Scotland for a couple of weeks and do a narrow boat trip on the canals.
I think I want to travel with you and your wife, Steve. Well, let's go back and now let's talk about the new source review. Can you tell us about it and your view on whether it will have a chilling effect on the coal plant upgrades? If this is correct, while there may be many opportunities to replace in-kind components on a coal plant, will these in-kind replacements significantly really add to the life of these power plants?
And there's a lot of unknowns there. So NSR, I think, could have a chilling effect on owners of coal plants' willingness to spend large capital if they potentially will trip into new source review. And there are two components of that at a very high level. One is if you replace in kind, so you're just doing maintenance, that's okay. There's not a problem there. But if you're upgrading, and that gets to be kind of a fuzzy term, and I'm not an NSR expert, I'm not a lawyer. If you upgrade that plant, you could potentially trip into NSR. The other thing that can happen is if you, I'll say it this way, you bust your historical annual emissions cap, you can trip NSR. So if you think about a power plant owner, they want to upgrade the plant so that they can operate more. That plant will be more efficient. So on a emissions per kilowatt hour or megawatt hour basis, the emissions will be lower. But if they operate it more, their annual emissions might go up. And so I think it's something we need to be concerned about. I know that EPA is looking at that. So hopefully that will be a positive outcome that will then give confidence to power plant owners to make those upgrades that will allow us to keep using baseload coal for AI and just electricity growth, allow them to continue for not just 4 or 5 years, but 10 or 15 years or longer.
Thank you. So looking ahead, as we look at the future, what gives you confidence that coal can remain a part of America's energy and industrial landscape?
Technology. It's all about advancing technology. And I think a certain level of pragmatism by the public in recognizing that we've got this rich natural resource, highest quality coal in the world. Other countries are not going to stop using it. China certainly won't. India won't. Africa will be using their coal for decades and decades to come. And so we can and should, and the way we do it is by coming up with the next generation of technologies that will satisfy the environmental concerns that people have. We can't ignore them, so we have to address them. For me, you do that with technology.
Great answer, Steve. Steve, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your service to the coal space, your insights, your experience, your service on the American Coal Council Board. Coming to Miami, not a bad gig to come to Miami in February. We appreciate your perspective and the topics that we've covered today in our Coal Nation. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you. It's been very enjoyable. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to Coal Nation, the official podcast of the American Coal Council. Our mission is to share coal's story and showcase its critical role in powering our economy and supporting our way of life. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe. The American Coal Council represents members across the entire coal supply chain and advocates tirelessly for our vital industry. There is strength in numbers, and we'd love for you to be part of the conversation. By joining ACC, you gain exclusive access to the latest industry developments, a voice in our work that can benefit your business, and incredible networking opportunities. To learn more, visit www.americancoalcouncil.org. Together, we are shaping the future of coal, and it's exciting. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time